Pat, you ready? Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our 5 o'clock school board meeting. Thank you for your patience and waiting for us. Today is March 3rd, 2022, and we now call this meeting to order. And if you will join me, please, in a moment of silence. Thank you. And if you will now stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And may I ask for a motion to allow Ms. Bryson Morseberger to join us remotely, please?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Bryant,
Present.
Ms. LaShundra Brysenberger.
Present.
Sorry.
It's
Ms.
okay.
Dooley. Here. Dr. Crad,
Present.
Mr. Morris,
Present.
Ms. Torres.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, and now a motion for approval of our agenda, please.
I move we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we are now at our first opportunity for comments from members of the community. As a reminder to anybody who would like to speak, please state your name, your address, and you are limited to 3 minutes. We have some people in the media center. If anybody would like to speak, please come up to the podium. And then if you are joining us remotely, please indicate a willing to speak by raising your hand or icon, or the raised hand icon in the Zoom room. We do have one person. And I believe Ray Reagan, if you're there.
I am. Can I go
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. All right, so good evening. My name is Ray Regan. I am a teacher at Walker Upper Elementary and the newly elected co-chair of the CEA Organizing Committee. I'm here tonight to update you on the ongoing efforts of the educators in Charlottesville City Schools to exercise our right to collectively bargain. At the January 6th meeting, after Dr. Gurley presented you with information about collective bargaining and the number of teachers spoke about the need for it, several of you expressed an interest in beginning the conversation. We have been very busy since that last meeting. The members of our organizing committee have spoken with 71% of licensed professionals in our school division and 53% of staff members overall. Among that group, the desire to engage in collective bargaining is overwhelming. 81% of the respondents expressed full support, another 18 are tentatively in support, and less than 1% are opposed. In the coming month, committee members will be holding events at their respective schools to have authorization cards signed by Charlottesville educators. At either the April or May school board meeting, we will present you with a formal request for a resolution. Our committee members will be reaching out to you in the coming days to discuss the details of that resolution. As we move forward on this road toward collaboration and equal voice, I want to remind you that the magic of Charlottesville City Schools happens in the classroom. Every day it is the teachers that make decisions, connect with students, give opportunities to students, and help students. Education does not happen without teachers. Charlottesville City Schools does not exist without teachers. While the details of collective bargaining may be subject to negotiation, discussion, and debate, the principle that workers have the right to join together and bargain with their employer as equals is not. If any of you are ready to express unreserved support for our rights this evening, we would love to hear from you. Again, thank you for your time and all that you do.
Thank you. Anybody else, Mr. Como?
Yeah, there was one other person. I just need Leslie to unshare the screen so I can see that. Holly, and the last name is Kiessling. Should be promoted now and you should be able to unmute and speak at this time.
Hello, hi, my name is Holly Kiessling, and I'm a parent of Levin and Luca Kiessling at Clark Elementary School. I'm here tonight representing the new group, Charlottesville United for Public Education. We want to encourage all local parents, grandparents, caregivers, and community members to get involved with us and to voice this support to City Council for prioritizing funding for our schools, including the $75 million reconfiguration of Buford. Right now, the focus is on the long-delayed Buford reconfiguration project and laying the groundwork for an early childhood center at Walker. But we know people are passionate about lots of education issues, from mental health to nutrition to transportation. This group exists to bring together those concerns, particularly voices that have been underrepresented. So if you've long cared about public schools and how they benefit your family and the community, Charlottesville United is for you. We invite everyone to visit charlottesvilleunited.org to find a way to get involved. Right now, that means signing up to receive email alert, action alerts, using our talking points to send letters to City Council, and requesting a yard sign, which you'll see popping up around town. We will deliver them to you. On behalf of Charlottesville United, thank you to our school board members, Dr. Gurley, and Charlottesville City School staff, and all you have been doing to support the $75 million reconfiguration funding needs and for our schools and kids across the board. Public school is the only thing we do together as a community and as a society, and it needs to be nourished. Thank you.
Thank you. Does not look like we have anybody else right now signed up in Zoom or through Zoom. Anybody else in the media center? Thank you. And again, we do have another opportunity towards the end of the meeting for public comment again. So thank you very much. I will close that for now, and we will move on to adoption of our consent agenda. And I will entertain a motion, please.
Yes, I move we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Get glass with
Any opposed?
then
I can smell it.
Thank you. Okay, so that passes unanimously. And now we will move to items for discussion. Dr. Gurley.
All right, up first, we do have our school nutrition and community partnership. That's Ms. Powell and Mr. Jones.
Here we go. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our community partners. And I'll actually be turning the podium over to Mr. Carlton Jones, who's our supervisor of our nutrition program, because Mr. Jones works very closely with our partners in Cultivate. But before I turn the podium over to him, I just want to take this opportunity, because I think it's the first one I've really had, to publicly thank Cultivate for their support with helping to feed our students during the pandemic. We had a lot of great community partnerships during that difficult time, but they were really a great partner in that effort. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jones.
Good evening. I'm going to introduce Cultivate Charlottesville. Cultivate Charlottesville is one of our community partners that we've worked very closely with. And it's a relationship that's continually building. And I personally enjoy working with them. But they're going to share some updates, and they're also going to share a few projects that we're collaborating on. So I'd like to introduce Jordan Johnson and Richard Morris.
There's, is,
And also, can you go up and tell Levin that
Hello
I'm
to the
leaving?
school board.
you can go up and tell him.
Neil.
Where is he?
I'm gonna be able to smack him in the face.
Why would he smack him too?
He said, I already said.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Richard Morris. I am the co-executive director with Cultivate Charlottesville. If I'm not mistaken, the last time we had the opportunity to present to the board was in 2019. At that time, our name was City Schoolyard Garden. And we love that name, but we're an organization that is engaged in gardening, and like the seasons, everything changes. In 2020, we changed our name to Cultivate Charlottesville. We believe that food is a human right. And we are working together with our partners and community members to build a healthy and just food system. And we do this through our 3 programs. The first being City Schoolyard Garden, where we have gardens in 8 of Charlottesville's schools and the 10th and Page neighborhood. And we do this through our Urban Agriculture Collective program, which is our community farm, where we produce thousands of pounds of food, and we share that food with hundreds of families at no cost to those families. And last but not least, we do this through our Food Justice Network program, where working with community and with our organizational partners, that from a food-focused perspective, we work on systemic and institutional change so that there's more equity in our systems. We're here tonight to talk about, to hear about City Schoolyard Garden. So I'm going to turn this over to my coworker, Jordan Johnson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jordan Johnson. I'm the City Schoolyard Garden Program Director with Cultivate Charlottesville. And I was overly confident about the material and how much stuff I could put on the slides. So I am going to do my best to minimize, and there are things that I'm not going to speak about that are on the slides. If you have questions, please do ask them though. So weeks before the pandemic started, we started our Healthy School Meals Initiative in collaboration with Charlottesville City Schools. And immediately we had to shift our perspective on what we wanted to do, and we needed to prioritize emergency food response to students over the planned goals of implementing fresh from scratch local cooking in the Charlottesville City Schools, and we needed to transfer to the delivery system. So we did that through the response to emergency needs events, and we did that through school break meal distribution, where we distributed out 17,000 meals in collaboration with other nonprofits, and spent tons of time fundraising and navigating what that process would look like, and using our Healthy School Meals Initiative to address that. There were some pieces with that Healthy School Meals process that we were able to keep on track, and we were hopeful to get a foundation built so that we could then, once we get back into in-person, focus on a lot more of that student voice and recognizing the need to engage students in the conversation. At that time, we also spent quite a bit of effort figuring out what our programming looked like, because we didn't have the school students in the schoolyards at the time. So we prioritized engagement with 3 Charlottesville neighborhoods: Friendship Court, where we engaged in an after-school club at the 6th Street Community Garden Space with UAC, at the Hearthwood Apartments, where we bought a bunch of rain boots and walked them through the path to the Greenbrier Garden and spent time there, and at the Hardy Drive site, where we engaged with them at City of Promise. And when we returned to school, we had some challenges in navigating how exactly we continued the momentum that we had prior to the pandemic. So we haven't had quite as high of student engagement rates as we have in the past, but we're hopeful to amp things up in this coming semester. Next slide, thank you. Our goal is really to try and solidify a sense of normalcy and familiarity for students, really prioritizing the space that they know how to engage. They know that it brings them joy. They know that they enjoy being out there, and they know that the experiences are positive out there. So our goal has been to encourage that social engagement and creating a space that continues to be welcoming and caring and like a safe space for students to be in. As we stand right now with the school, the garden programming, we are currently short one garden coordinator staff. So we are doing our best to fill in and have as much capacity as deemed capable for those staff who are doing it. And we are also really excited to continue our spring seedling project, which is coming up in May. We'll have that distribution, but we're working with Buford students and the new urban farming teacher. We're hoping to collaborate with them to get that project covered for the next couple months and make sure that we're getting students engaged in growing those 10,000 seedlings that we're growing. We're doing 5,000 at Buford and 5,000 in collaboration with UAC at K-Tech. They're doing some as well. This is also the point where we start recruiting for the food justice intern cohort. So we have a 6-week, we're going to continue our 6-week intensive paid internship program for high school students, prioritizing Charlottesville City High School students to engage in those garden spaces and recognize where they land in the system that we have that is our food system. And we're prioritizing with our staff, engaging with students outside of school. So recognizing and making that connection between the school gardens and community gardens and the food that they eat at home and the food that they eat at school. Next slide, please. So our Healthy School Meals Initiative, starting in the early 2020, we started a 5-year collaborative initiative between Cultivate and Charlottesville City Schools to help build a sustainable nutrition program that supplies more robust, fresh from scratch menu. This is done through numerous grants at the local, regional, state, and federal level, including a $500,000 grant from the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation to help address the nutrition department as a system. So recognizing that we're not just trying to put vegetables into the cafeteria, but recognizing that in order to be successful in it, we have to look at it with many strategies. So we're looking at it with the lens of equity and making sure that we're thinking about student meal debt and how to navigate and reduce the burden for families when we're talking about student meal debt, or staff trainings and equipment that are needed. We've gone in and supported a purchase for an oven at Johnson to help with the meal distribution during the pandemic. We're currently also in the process of getting deli cases at CHS so that students can get to-go sandwiches, wraps, and salads to ease that line a little bit. We're also looking at the strategy, knowing that the food is also important. So recognizing that we're purchasing local fresh produce. We stress universally, Carlton Jones and the Cultivate team, the significance of student voice and navigating ways that we can collect feedback from students and get their voice in there so that we can make the changes that they want to see in the cafeteria. And nutrition and garden education as well, where we're supporting some of the garden efforts and also a pre-K nutrition program with Jessica Brantley. So where we are now, we just hired a farm to school coordinator, Shamara Banks, who was previously the kitchen manager at Walker. And she is, through conversation with the nutrition team, we brought Shamara on to Cultivate. So she is a Cultivate staff and she will work very intensely with the nutrition program to get feedback from students and help navigate some of these strategies that I just mentioned. We have a new farm to school week that is next week. We just made it up. So we have a second farm to school week this year. It's never, we don't know anywhere else that does that. We are having a robust farm to school week next week that's full of local items, including local chef salads that are there all week, local potatoes and onions, and local fresh chicken that are all going to be available to students, and local fruit and as well every day. That'll be available to all students, anybody who wants to come through free of charge. Shamira Banks is going to also be focusing on nutrition committees at Walker Upper Elementary, at Buford, and at CHS to engage with students, a smaller cohort of students to be liaisons between the whole student body and the nutrition staff. And also planning to do taste tests to increase that student choice option and navigate, making sure that we're prioritizing what the students want to see and that they have a voice in what gets put onto that lunch line. We continue to collaborate with the Charlottesville students through our food justice internship program, as well as looking for other avenues, including we just met with the Black Student Union last week to answer questions that they had, and they were excited to engage in the process of changing that. We have some impacts. Again, our student garden engagements have been really low. We're usually at about 30,000 for the whole year. And this year we're at 7,000 or 7,700. And the other one that I wanted to highlight right now is the 3,530 paid food justice internship hours for 19 high school students between the summer of 2020 and last month, when we just finished our second cohort since the pandemic began. Some of the challenges that we're facing, one of them that I wanted to just hit on again is that the Healthy School Meals Initiative, we're about 2.25 years into this, and we are just now starting to see the clouds part a little bit and seeing that we can look back at what our original goals were and be able to start figuring out how to address those in ways that we haven't been able to while doing virtual learning and navigating the new systems in the nutrition department. Moving forward, we have solidified the USDA Farm to School grant that is helping to fund a collaboration with Antoine Brinson of Culinary Concepts, where Carlton Jones, myself, Shamira, and Antoine will come together and come up with a program and a training plan for nutrition staff to support the culinary building skills. And then the last piece that I just wanted to touch on is that we're going to be thinking about moving forward is seeing CCS's commitment to getting students outside and connecting to food through the expansion of the urban farming program into Buford Middle School. With the redevelopment of Buford, there's been, right now as it stands, there's a building going over the garden space, and in conversations around the garden, around cost savings, one of the areas that was talked about was the garden, and wanting to make sure that we are, as Cultivate, we are voicing the importance of that and recognizing the importance that the students have expressed to us of keeping that space. I am open to any questions at this point.
Thank you for all of that information. Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Kraft?
Yeah, well, again, we're grateful to have this organization in our community. I think it benefits our students, it benefits all of us, really. My question was about the lower student interactions and how much of that was related to COVID protocols versus other factors.
Oh, that was most. I mean, it was that included last year's engagement, which was virtual. So that was, we were engaging twice a week with 10 students instead of
So
instead of once a week with 30 students in 10 different classes or whatever.
How about this academic year?
We have a shortage of staff, so that's part of the concern. But there mostly it is due to trying to both navigate new relationships at Buford, because originally we had staff who were there seeing students every day. That we had Shannon Gaffey, the urban
Urban farming.
yeah, before the urban farming, but she was doing the garden aid classes and stuff. So we're just there's a transition period that we're trying to navigate what our engagement looks like at Buford and at CHS with the robust urban farming class that already exists.
And at the elementary schools, are the interactions also a lot lower?
Not a lot lower, but we're working on navigating internally how to make sure that we can have the support and staff that we need to cover all those programming.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I
LaShondra,
have
do you have any? Yep.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I was just wondering, when you were talking about the next week, the community schools, the farm week, and you were saying that they could get the fruit and there was some other items, and you said they just come through. Where do they go to get those items?
Those are all on the lunch line. That is all the lunch line items that next week, the chef salad will be a local chef salad. The you want to go? All right.
Yes, all of those items will be part of our normal lunch menu for next week. So, any student can come and get a meal at no charge.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Rugamaya, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. I have a quick question about the interns.
Yes.
So I know some of those, how do you promote that, or how do you reach out? I know that some of those positions sometimes come up through the KIP program, but are you doing outreach right now through the schools, or?
That's a good, so last year, I think it was just last year, or maybe the past 2 years, KIP has not been engaging in the internship program. I'm not sure I'm comfortable saying that. But so what we're doing this year is we've always gone through the urban farming class at CHS. We will now go through the urban farming class at Buford. We are also engaged in a cooking club at Buford. When we met with the Black Student Union last week, there were students who were interested. We have an application and we just try and put it out there as much as possible. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, somewhat. So those intern programs, I mean, you said they're paid through the school year as well as the students continue to work with you all through, but
that's correct.
They often start through the summer. Can you describe a little bit about what that program might look like, or what the responsibilities for one of those interns would look like?
Yeah, so we have, it's usually the last week of June or the first week of July, we start a 6-week intensive paid internship program that includes maintaining garden spaces, both the community garden spaces and the school garden spaces, as part of the work that we're doing, as well as building out advocacy skills. And we've actually had the interns come to the school board meetings and spoke before, and gone to city council meetings before and done presentations. So building out that advocacy skills to share their voice about their experience in the food system. And so we spend an intensive 6 weeks with those 10, we're hoping to have 12 this year, but 10 interns. And then what we do during the school year is we take it down, obviously, to just a couple hours a week that we dedicate towards a different project we've done. We've worked with the interns to build out a Black and Brown farmer directory to highlight Black and Brown farmers. And we've also done, one of the projects that we did during the school year was developing out a recipe book for Carlton Jones to look at recipes to then prepare and do taste tests with students on. So the engagement decreases during the school year, but they're still engaged with that same cohort throughout the year.
And what are the ages of those kids?
14 to 18. It's high school. It's people who are going into 9th grade
Okay.
to just graduated, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, all of you.
Thank you. Up next. All right. Up next, we have Dr. Baptist with the COVID update, and she will also, after the COVID update, she will give us a policy update.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. Let's see. There we go. Next slide, please. While she's getting that, as we all know, our numbers are dropping, which is absolutely wonderful. I'm very excited about that. The numbers I'm going to give you tonight are pretty much the same sorts of things I've been sharing with you at previous meetings, but just want to let you know where we are at this point. There's that. Next slide. That's fine. The next slide is the map of Virginia. And you can see we actually have some localities now that are not in the red. So that's exciting that we are moving in the right direction across the Commonwealth. If you know where Virginia is, which is near the one piece of orange there, which is Buckingham County, you'll see that we are still in the red, both for the city and the surrounding area as far as. So everybody in Blue Ridge Health District is still in the red. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, while we're here, this map and these levels, is this based on VDH metrics or is it the new CDC metrics?
It's VDH metrics, and it's based on the rolling 14-day counts that I try to share each time. So this is VDH, and down at the bottom where you've got the graph, that is the city of Charlottesville.
Thank you.
So you can see we've been down, and then in the fall, we got back into the orange, but we've been back into the red for several weeks now, or a couple months. Next slide, please. These are the monthly counts for the city of Charlottesville. These are not Charlottesville City Schools. They're the city of Charlottesville, and they're the cumulative amounts for each month. So you can see where we started back when school started in September. The really bad month for the city of Charlottesville, like everywhere else, was January. We went down in February. March is blank because we're only in the third day of March. So where are we on 3 days of March? Already to this point, we've had 58 cases for the 3 days of March for the city of Charlottesville. Again, not Charlottesville City Schools, the city of Charlottesville. And looking at that rolling 14-day count, you can see back in January, we had 1,278 cases through a rolling count. And we've really dropped all the way down to 285. Today, we were at 249. And the last time we were at that point was almost the end of December. December 23rd, we were at 247. So you can see we're definitely going down. Once we get below 200 is when they will likely move us, the VDH metric will likely move us to orange, which is substantial out of red. So we're getting very, very close to that. Next slide, please. This is the UVA model again. I've shown that to you a couple times. The little box near the bottom is where we were or where we are. I think the date on that is March the 6th. So just above, you can kind of see a small dot. So we have come down dramatically since we were at the peak near the end of January, 1st of February. So our numbers for the city of Charlottesville, the Charlottesville metropolitan area, have continued to drop. And lastly, the dashboard, you can see we barely made the dashboard. This was done through yesterday. So we only had a couple of cases this week. We only had one case reported today. So our numbers are great. We're still doing all of the testing that we're doing. The next molecular is still coming in 3 days a week and doing our testing. We do still have the test to stay test available for families. We have test to stay test available for our staff. We've got other testing that if someone comes in and is not feeling well and they think it could be it's COVID symptoms, we also have the testing for that. So we're continuing all of that. We're still doing some vaccination clinics within our schools. I happened to be at Charlottesville High School when the nurse was, the Blue Ridge nurse was leaving Tuesday. They had done 24 shots that day. So we were very pleased about that, and they were excited because some of them were even first shots. So we're still doing that and trying to help facilitate vaccinations as people request them. If you've been watching the news, you'll know that some of the vaccination and testing sites are beginning to shut down in the area. But we're hoping to still be able to work with Blue Ridge and our testing company to keep doing our testing for however long they're willing to do it, which I think is through the school year. So that's the COVID update, where we are at this point. Now, I'd ask if there are any questions about that before we talk about the policy.
Any questions, anybody? LaShondra, any questions? So the testing programs that we have in place right now, who funds those? Are those grant?
Virginia Department of Health and VDOE in a collaborative effort. Now, we purchased the test to stay for our staff because staff are not eligible to participate in the test to stay programs, but all of the other tests were given to us by Department of Health.
And no indication at this point that those will be rolled back prior to. I strongly.
So anybody
Might
within a student or a staff member who feels like they've got COVID symptoms, we've got the ability to test, whether it's the PCR, which is what Next Molecular does, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays for us. And then we've got rapid tests for test to stay and for students, rapid test to stay for adults, and rapid test for folks who come in and don't feel well and think it could be COVID.
So I mean, I did see, that a lot of the community sites are closing down within the next week or two by the middle of March, I think. I don't know if that's all of them. I know that there were some independent groups that were doing some testing throughout the mall, but it seems to me that this potentially, could really impact, hopefully not, I don't know where there's wood, but that we don't have another variant, or a rise in cases. But as far as equity and availability of being tested, this is a little concerning from my perspective. So I really am appreciative that we are continuing to offer that and hope that we can minimally through the end of the school year.
I feel like we will have any testing supplies that we would need because we ordered tests and they have told us to let us know if we need more. And so it's not like this was our final allotment. So I've still got, I don't know the number, but probably 200 to 300 that are still in my office. So as the schools need them, I'm getting them to the school so that we will have them.
Great, thank you. All right, I guess we can roll into policy.
Okay. As everyone has seen in the news, I'm sure the governor and the legislature changed the law regarding the mask in schools by students, that it's no longer a requirement. Our policy EK, which you passed back in September of 20, did include language that was a requirement for students and staff. So I have made changes in the normal way I do things, crossing out language that needs to be crossed out and bolded language that's added to make sure that our policy does meet the state law. So we don't have anything in this now that requires students. We can still encourage students to wear masks. We are still requiring staff to wear masks. We've also, in the first paragraph, added a statement that we will continue to monitor the transmission rate for Charlottesville and will adjust the policy and regulations as the transmission rate changes. So if we do get below the red or whatever, we can talk about what changes we would want to make at that point, and we could make those changes in regulations without having to bring a policy back to you as things have the potential to change. We're still requiring masks on buses, and we are doing that based on the fact that we're still in a level of high transmission. When we get out of the high transmission, we will need to revisit that to see whether we want to continue that or we will change that. But for the time being, the policy I'm bringing to you tonight for action does remove any requirement for students to wear a mask, but does still contain language for staff. We've had some questions from staff about, do they have to wear their masks outside? There's a statement in here that staff can take the mask off outside. So we are meeting the letter of the law and trying to still encourage students and staff to wear masks and to maintain safety.
In several spots, it references until there is any revision in guidance. To whom are we accepting guidance from at this point?
What I see on CDC, what I see with VDH, every Tuesday call that I'm on with health department and pediatricians. So it's a collection of various different people, not just one set person or group. But even CDC does talk about the level of high transmission. So we're looking at that. You can see from the VDH information, we're still in high transmission. Pediatricians will tell us that they still believe that it's safer to do certain things that are less stringent than what CDC has said. So it's just a combination and trying to do what we think is the safest for our students.
Any questions from anybody else? Lashandra?
Not at this time.
I have a small bit of concern. Under students, the second bullet point, referring to physical education, active recess, sporting events, and practices. It says that students do not need to wear a mask or face covering, but then it says, however, a mask or face coverings are required for participants not actively engaged in physical activity. For me, just for me, this feels like a contradiction to the adjustments that we just made. And I feel like that in terms of enforcement, if you have a teacher outside with some students and we are not requiring them to make masks, right, following the state policy, if they're not within 6 feet, we can't say, hey, you need to put your mask on. Or if they're changing classes, we can't say, put your mask on, you're gonna be within 6 feet. And then you can take your mask back off. So I feel like this is a little bit of a contradiction. I don't know if it was something that was, we kind of just forgot about or didn't look at completely. I feel like before we pass this, we should maybe amend the recommendation for or eliminate the second bullet.
The intent, and we can certainly eliminate if that's the board's wishes. The intent was if you have a team and students are not actively participating, they're on the bench, then they would still have the mask on. But if they're actually active, then they would not have to have the mask on. But if there's wording or thought that the board would like that changed, I can certainly do that.
How can we require the students to wear a mask just then? Isn't that a contradiction to the governor's policy, the new legislation? How do we require, or is this directed at students or at adult
Students. So
observers?
So is your recommendation, Mr. Morris, is to just take the second bullet away?
I believe so. I think based on this particular bullet point, like we know that we can't require them to wear a mask, especially on, I mean, earlier on it states that it's on school grounds, right? So that means including being outside. I feel like we have some coaches that work in our buildings. They would not be able to require students to wear a mask. But then if they were maybe a baseball coach, because this policy recommends or references dugouts, if they could not then, I think it's going to be an enforcement issue. That's ultimately what it comes down to. I think it's going to be an enforcement issue. So I move to amend this policy, striking that second bullet from the student section.
And actually, I think we could take it probably a step further, Dr. Baptist, because we technically can strike all of it, because truly right now the letter of the law is masks are optional. So really the spirit of what we're trying to say in Charlottesville City Schools is that we just are encouraging students to wear a mask. We're just asking to wear a mask. We're encouraging. So really all this, the part where students may wear masks when eating or drinking, I mean, technically we can draw a line through all of it because the spirit of what we're trying to say is that while it's optional, we still are encouraging to wear a mask at all times.
Certainly.
I mean,
So just put a period at the end of all times and leave it there. Okay.
if that's what the pleasure of the
Yeah.
board is, but I think once I heard Mr. Morris say that and then I reread it, I mean, really what we're just saying is we would encourage students to wear a mask at all times, but there's never any time where it's required by the law.
I have stricken that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I agree. I don't like it, but I agree.
But it still
With
will
you.
be
I'm with
required
you.
on the bus, just
Yes.
not, okay.
For
Ab-
now.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think if we can leave it in bold, it's still encouraged. Put it in all capitals. But I agree, and I think this is a tough one, and I take pride in Charlottesville City Schools and the work that we've done and the support that we've given, and of course, we will follow the law, but we do continue to encourage everybody to wear masks. I have to admit that I was a little, I did see your addendum or the change, as far as employees removing masks when outside, and all I can picture is, yes, there's some relief to be able to take that off, but kids just running up to the teachers and wanting to be close and everybody talking and not having masks on, and it just makes me a little nervous, so I hope that everybody continues to be mindful of distancing and the fact that this is airborne. Even when we are outdoors, there are risks, and we do need to be careful, and I appreciate the adults modeling the behaviors that we feel and have been shown to keep everybody safer. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Mr. Morris has made a motion to addend this policy. At that point, is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
And next, I will work with Dr. Gurley to revise the regulations to match policy, but we wanted to get this done first.
Thank
Can I
you.
just ask a question as far as, looking ahead and, hopefully, our levels will go down. And I guess my question is, do these decisions, do any decisions that would change the requirements for staff have to be approved by the board, or are they just considered regulations?
As long as we have in here that it's required for staff to wear masks in the policy, we would need to come back to you, although we've said that we are looking at the transmission. So hopefully by next month or even May, we will be down in the consistent low transmission that we might have more recommendations at that time.
Okay. Thanks.
And I just want to would comment to that, and I know everybody's probably excited to think that we may actually even get to that point, but remind people that people are, have family members who are compromised. People have kids who are, younger than 5 and who aren't eligible for these vaccinations. So, there's a lot of considerations to this. Every single staff person in this building, we value. You have relationships with our students. We want you in the buildings. We want you to be healthy. And, that just opens up risks. And yes, it's a discussion, I think, and a lot of considerations, but I don't want to lose sight of that, and of taking care of each other and what that means. Anyway.
Well, I would hope that, I'm sure that you'll be in consultation with the Blue Ridge Health District, and, that this will be sort of, advice that is coming from, health and medical parts of the community too. So
Everything we've tried to do is for student and staff safety. And I
Yes.
think some localities may have relaxed some particular topics earlier, but what you said, Ms. Torres, in thinking about our little ones in schools,
yeah,
I know that we've got populations that aren't eligible for the vaccinations yet, so I'm proud that we have maintained some conservative approaches to some of these pieces. I'm ready, just like the next person, to not have this, but as long as I can keep myself and other people safe, I'm okay with it.
You know, and not just the little ones too, but, you know, our neighboring school division, you know, I mean, there are cases and being litigated right now with students who are immunocompromised, students with special education needs who are at risk. And so it's bigger than just myself, right? I mean, this is about a culture of care and taking care of our entire community. So,
I now have a grandson to think about.
right, exactly.
well, I would say, and I have a granddaughter who just got over COVID. So I've seen firsthand how sick little ones can get and how scary it can be.
And again,
And
on
just-
behalf of the board, oh, I'm sorry, LaShonda, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add an additional voice to the chorus to say that the children in the 5 to 11 cohort, I think we're still in the 30s nationally for the rate of vaccination. So elementary school children, that are eligible for the vaccine aren't vaccinated at very high rates. So all of those things are something to take into consideration.
Yes, thank you. And Dr. Baptist, on behalf of all of us, thank you again for all of the work that you do
Glad to.
around
Thank you.
this.
All right, we now have Ms. Powell, and she's going to bring us a budget update.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Gurley. The budget update I have for you this evening is, and I'll wait till we get the slides up. Slide closer so I can navigate. Leslie, do you mind if I punch the buttons myself? Right, okay. This update does not impact the budget proposal that you all have already adopted. It doesn't impact the thermometer in any way, but it's information that we felt, was worth sharing this evening. So basically what I want to talk with you about is a technical adjustment that we're recommending to relieve compression in steps 1 through 3 of the teacher scale. And I'll show you the details for that here in a moment. And then also, I'd just like to give you a brief update on the sales tax for school construction that's being, debated in the legislature in Richmond. So again, nothing that impacts the budget that's been adopted that's going to be presented to City Council on Monday, nothing that impacts the thermometer. So regarding the proposed technical adjustment for the teacher scale, what you see here is a part of a graphic you're all too familiar with. It's that detailed budget changes document. And as you all know, we always talk about our salaries in terms of step plus, so that the total action of advancing a step on the scale plus the raise ends up being in line with the total budgeted allowance for salary actions. So the average step across all CCS pay scales is around 1.25%. Now, this does exclude the support staff scales, nutrition, custodians, IA secretaries, because when we took the living wage and made that adjustment, as the school board did that a couple years back, that was a big lift in 1 year across all those scales. And so those scales did compress with steps that are around 1% on average per step. This year, as I was working with my colleagues and we were looking at our teacher scale, what you see here on the chart, this is actually a download, if you will, of our current teacher scale from our business system, our payroll and business system. And you see it's the scale that was effective July 1st, 2021. It's our current scale. And the far right column shows the steps, the percentage change between each step. And if you do an average across all those steps on the teacher scale, it's actually an average of 1.48, so almost 1.5% differential between each step on our teacher scale. And we like to look at this periodically to make sure that our assumptions about our step changes are correct. Even if you take out the last step, that big step up onto step 29, it's still an average of 1.37% per step. That's our current scale. But if you look at the very beginning of the scale, you see that the differential between the steps is lower. In particular, what's eye-catching is that step up from 0 to 1 is a little less than 1%. And then even after that, you're right around 1%. And so that caught our attention, that the current average is 1.12% in that area of the scale, with step 0 to 3 actually at the 0.96. So we wanted to see, is there something we can do about that to tweak it and make it a better scale for us for next year? And the good news is there is. And if any of you have ever worked with pay scales, I'm going to tell you, people like myself and Renee Hoover, we take a deep breath before we start looking at this, because when you start messing with pay tables, the ripple effect can get real big, real fast. And so, but because it is so out of whack there in the early part, it was actually a pretty easy adjustment. And that's what I want to talk you through here so you can see it. What you have now is that same sort of download of the proposed pay table. Again, this is, if you look about 4 columns over though, this is the effective date 7/1/2022. So the third column over where it says pay rate, that's what's loaded in. It's like a batch that's not been made official yet, but that's the batch we're working with right now in the payroll system. And so you see step 0 would be $51,882 after the proposed 5% action and so forth. What we are proposing is that we take step 0, make it 52,000, which I think is just a great optic. And then we smooth those steps for steps 1 leading up to step 5 and make them 1.1%. Doesn't quite get us to 1.25 there, but it's a good step. The differential is shown in the far right corner. It's $118 bump over what would have been on step 0, $231 over what would have been on step 1 if we just did the straight adjustment like we normally would without tweaking the spacing on these scales. It's not a big difference. The technical term we use in accounting is it's immaterial as far as budget. It really is. But we think it's an important step to go ahead and make because we can make this technical adjustment, and you see it smoothed right in to the same exact action that we already had planned for step 6. So we wanted to bring this to you for consideration as a technical adjustment. We are recommending this, that we just go forward and make this technical adjustment. We do know, looking ahead, and for those of you who've been on the board for a while, you may recall the last time we did a salary study, one of the recommendations. This was actually, by the way, this was when we started to really turn up the volume on the conversation about how teachers graduate with a BA just like all these other fields do. And yet the average starting salary for these other professions is around 60,000. And we were trying to be that rising tide that lifts all ships. So Dr. Atkins really turned up the volume on that conversation coming out of that last salary study, because no wonder there's a teacher shortage, right? And also there was another recommendation that came out of that we haven't gotten back to since COVID, but it's looking at our degree supplements. So just know that it is time for us to do that. And of course, we need to continue to evaluate our teacher scale for competitiveness. That's a continuous process, that's a given. But this is something we can do now. And I personally got really attached to that $52,000 on step 0 when I saw it, just because this is our base 200-day scale with no degree supplements. It seems like only yesterday we got to 50,000. And for me personally, that was like a feel-good moment to finally get our starting salary to start with a 5. And I'm glad that I think we've been able to pull others along in this fight. And this is just a tiny step, but I think it looks a lot better. It feels good. And from a budget perspective, it's immaterial. So we wanted to share that with you. I will pause here because I believe my next slide is about it's about the sales tax. So questions or discussion here?
LaShondra, any questions?
I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so regarding the sales tax and efforts in Richmond, probably all of you are well aware, and hopefully you were able to see it. The subcommittee number 3, House Finance Subcommittee number 3 met on Friday, February 25th, 7:30 in the morning. And once again, the legislation was, there was a vote to lay it on the table. The vote was along party lines. I will say that the testimony was really beautiful. There were great speakers there representing Isla White, Charlottesville, and Prince Edward, VACORP, which is the county association, VML for cities, VSBA. You know, everyone had, I thought, very impactful things to say in a short period of time. Mayor Snook and Vice Mayor Wade represented us well, and we certainly appreciate their advocacy and partnership with us and everything we're all doing behind the scenes. It was a disappointing outcome, but not entirely unexpected. However, there is still a week and a half left in the session, and there is still strong bipartisan interest and support for school construction, whether it takes the form of something around sales tax, the sales tax tool, which could be valuable for so many diverse locations across the Commonwealth, or whether it takes another form. There are still significant discussions happening. I received an update as early as this morning from our consultant / lobbyist. And so there are still discussions happening, but they're at a point in the session where, you know, we're just not sure how that will develop. At this time, our consultant does not recommend any specific push at specific targets or for state advocacy, but we will certainly let you know if this changes because he's monitoring the situation very closely. And we should know by Friday, March the 11th, if the bipartisan effort is still advancing. So by next Friday, we will know if all the discussions are yielding, you know, the results that we hope for. What I understand about the process with the budget and the conferees is it's just not a highly scheduled public process. It's a lot of conversations happening in all kinds of different meetings and all different kinds of locations. So it's not like there's a certain, like the subcommittee hearing that we can get folks, you know, rallied up for to testify and whatnot. There's not that type of opportunity at this point in the process. And that's the update I have for you on that topic.
My understanding from what I've read, I guess, in the last day or two, so Senator McClellan or the Senate bill and then the House bill specific to like loans, the 500 million from the Senate, I think, and then a little more than that maybe from the House, but just as far as formulas that will be used for different localities to see if you even qualify for that, or rebates or those types of things. I mean, is that something, do you have a sense, is that something that Charlottesville would even qualify for?
I don't think we would fare very well with some of the things I've seen, because one of the things I saw is the LCI is going to be used as a metric, as part of that metric. But regardless of what happens, and I'm not going to say that I know everything that's being discussed, but the $2 billion that was put forward and the language around that, you know, it's great to see any movement around this. So I don't want to sound negative about anything really, because progress is progress. But when you consider that 2 million versus the over 25 billion that the joint bipartisan committee on school facilities determined was the need right now in the Commonwealth, you know, it's a drop in the bucket for a lot against a tidal wave or a tsunami of projects that are, you know, past due for the most part. And there's the fact that when you talk about loan programs, localities still have to have a way to pay that back. I mean, low interest, again, I don't want to be overly negative or dismissive of low interest or no interest, you know, programs, but you still have to pay that principal back at least. And for some localities, you know, that's still going against your debt. It's still going against your cash flow streams. And so the sales tax vehicle, and because of the fact it excludes groceries and medications, it's up to the local voters to decide if that's a tool they want to use or not. It's just so logical. And there was no, I didn't say this earlier, but it's important to note, there was no opposition in the subcommittee hearing, none. And all of the speakers, I was just so impressed with the speakers from all the localities. And these were very diverse localities represented in this conversation. And I can tell you from working and living in another very different locality than Charlottesville, this could be a very useful tool for them as well at some point. So it just, it hurts my heart when I think about it, because just based on my experiences and my colleagues who work in school business, I know how important and how helpful this could be for so many communities in this state. So we'll
Can I
see what
just
happens.
Clarify what you said from the consultant, that I guess I was wondering, are they saying that even though the bill was killed in the subcommittee regarding the sales tax referendum, there might be other avenues where that might actually be approved
So
or
yeah,
passed?
the most encouraging thing I can say is that there's such strong bipartisan interest in this area and in this area of need and finding a solution for it, that there are multiple pieces of different legislation that have been put forward, like the loan program that Ms. Torres mentioned, but also, the budget discussions are still ongoing. That's in process now for the remainder of the session. So, we don't know what could happen for sure, but I'm hearing there is still a lot of discussion, but there's not any specific subcommittee meeting or anything like that that we can tell people who want to advocate on this topic on this date, there will be this, specific decision point. But it would take some it's going to take creative problem solving to resolve this issue of significant backlog of school construction for the state. They're aware of the issue. So the conversations are continuing, but the particular pieces of legislation for Charlottesville and these other localities that leaned into the prior enabling legislation, we were disappointed with the outcome on February 25th, that's for sure.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, I guess that's it for items for discussion. Next, we have board response to written reports. Again, just as a reminder to the public, this is kind of a new format as far as the school board members reporting out different committees and goings on that we've attended in the last month, so that is there for public record. And we will now move on to our final opportunity for comments from members of the community. So if there's anybody in the media center who would like to speak, come on up to the podium. And or if there is anybody remotely who's joining us, please raise your hand or use the raise the hand icon in the Zoom room and you will be identified. So we'll give it a few more seconds. All right, I don't think we have anybody at this point in time, so we will move on to comments from the board. So I will, let's see, LaShundra, do you mind starting if you have any comments?
My only comments are that it has been a rough month, couple weeks, and just everyone listening, everyone working in the division, you all, everyone that we just keep moving, putting one foot in front of the other and taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other.
Thank you. Dr. Kraft?
I had the opportunity last week to tour Beaufort along with Mr. Bryant and Dr. Gurley, two of our city council members and city staff, as well as VMDO. And just want to say, I mean, even though we've been talking about this, my own kids went to Beaufort, to actually go through the school in such detail and to see the substandard conditions of that building, the conditions that our wonderful staff, teaching staff and administrative staff working all day and that we send our students to. I just viscerally had a very hard time with this, and it you know, I know that we're all working in very good faith to undertake the renovation of this school. And I just want to say that the community has to find a way to do this. We just do, because in the end, this is the message that our students are getting, that this is this is the kind of facility that we expect them to be in, to do well, to thrive, and to be happy, and to grow. And it was kind of shocking, actually, to see these spaces and, you know, to realize the just severe state of disrepair that this building is in. So we just, and you know, this is just to the whole community. We really, really have to do better for our kids. So I just want to say that it's worth it to actually go and see what it's like for everybody to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morse?
I apologize. I should have said this during the committee reports, but I just want our administration team know that the Charlottesville Scholarship Program, that scholarship is not just for students, but is also intended for our instructional assistants if they want to pursue a bachelor's degree to become an active teacher. So they are encouraged to apply for that. So I just want to let that be known. Thank you.
Mr. Morris, I saw that, so I think that's really interesting. Is there a link, or is there, if you can send out at some point?
I will be
Or
happy to.
can we, Dr. Gurley, make sure that our staff know how to apply for that if interested?
Absolutely. Our communications team will help us get that out.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. I want to echo what Dr. Kraft said in regards to Beaufort Middle School. After the tour on last Friday, when I returned home, I became just overwrought with grief. When I walked into that building, I felt like I had gone back 50 years. I was a student at Walker Junior High School in 1966 as a 7th grader when both of those schools opened. I cannot tell you that Beaufort is in dire need of repair or just totally be dismantled and reconfigured. We've got to do better by our children. I don't think I cried as much as I did Friday since my mother died a year ago. As a former teacher and school counselor, I just felt that our children were being deprived. That building looked awful. Classrooms that used to be conference rooms, boarded up by partitions, no windows, and children in those small classes, teachers teaching without windows, the gymnasium in disarray. I'm hoping that the community will rally around this reconfiguration so that we can move forward with this project that we've been talking about for the last 11 or 12 years. I was moved beyond tears after seeing that building the way it is now. I would encourage anyone in the community to take a tour of that building. And to leave on a positive note this evening, I want to also thank my Dr. Gurley and my fellow board members for attending last night's forum. Central Virginia Virginia School Board Association Forum. Dr. Paul Harris was our keynote speaker, who presented to us a powerful and thought-provoking presentation. I think we've set the tone for the rest of the regional meetings. So I do appreciate my fellow board members attending and my judges for the art contest. And you know who you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lee.
Sure. So just echoing what my colleagues have said so eloquently, but just imploring our community to step up to the plate here. We really have an opportunity to lead and show what our values are. And so thank you to the Charlottesville United for Public Education. Just so thrilled to see a group of community members coming together and rallying support for our students in our community.
Thank you. And Ms. Rigamaya?
This is just in regards to the when we were talking about the masking policy and how it's optional. Since it's gone into effect since, was it Monday or Tuesday? I've fortunately only seen maximum like 7 students without masks. So I thought that was nice to share.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Well, thank you, board members, for all of your comments. I agree, Ms. Dooley, the Charlottesville United, wonderful group who has stepped up and formed to advocate for our students in the community. I have my yard sign. If anybody else would like one, I have a couple extras I'm happy to deliver or pass out. So thank you. And again, I just want to reiterate the importance of keeping each other safe and supporting each other, and supporting a student's, decision to wear a mask or not wear a mask, but just kindness and trying to support all of those around us. So thank you, everybody. And with that, I believe I will pass the mic to you, Dr. Gurley, for your comments.
All right. I just want to thank Cultivate Charlottesville and Mr. Jones for all the hard work that goes into that program and just being able to move that, from farm to table. And I think that's a great example for our children. I just want to remind our families that March 18th is the deadline for preschool applications, and we have some amazing preschool classrooms. And so just want to make sure that people keep that on their radar as we are out in the community looking for our little ones, that March the 18th is the deadline. And if you have any questions, Sheila Sparks is one of the many points of contact. And then I have a couple staff celebrations that I want to share. I want to shout out David Becker for being selected to be the Virginia State Representative to the Southeastern Theater Conference. And then I want to also shout out Miss Maylise Crouchy. Hopefully I said her last name correctly. I apologize if I didn't. I'll send you something nice. And she was honored to be among the best elementary teachers in the Charlottesville Family, in the Charlottesville Family Ultimate 2022 Go-To Guide. And then Cicely Shelton Barnes from Venerable. She was the winner of the 2022 JMU Literacy Alumni Award. And last, but certainly not least, our retiring Miss Laura Thomas of CHS. She was the winner of the American Strings Teacher Association 2022 Elizabeth A.H. Green School Educator Award, and just really excited that so many phenomenal, amazing, outstanding things happen right here in Charlottesville, because we have some of the most talented people on earth. And so we're just so thankful to work with such amazing people. And that is all I have.
Thank you, sir. And we are grateful for you.
Thank you.
Do we have a work session wrap up? Did we have anything? I know Dr. Baptist had to depart. I don't recall anything. Okay. And for anybody who couldn't hear, so that was, she will make the correction to the policy, the masking policy, and then also make sure that the application for the scholarship for IAs is communicated out. So thank you. Okay, upcoming meetings, we have, for anybody who would like to tune in, we will be presenting, Charlottesville City Schools will be presenting our budget this coming Monday to City Council. That's not on our list, but, and then I believe that's the first opportunity for City Council to receive their budget from the city manager. So that'll be an opportunity to tune in and get a sense of what that. I do not, but I know that I have respectfully put in a request to hopefully not be the last item on their agenda, but that remains to be seen. And then we have Thursday, April 14th, and I'm assuming that's because we have spring break in there somewhere, is our next school board meeting here at 5 o'clock in the media center. So I believe that's it. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting. And thank you, everybody.
Good night.